All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching Africa's finest breakfast show, Newday on People's Television. You find us on channel 120 on the Star Times decoder. My name is Anthony Momodu. It's now time for us to shift gear into the discuss segment when we look at very, very salient issues of national concern. This morning we'll be looking at community policing and how it's going to help us probably fight this headsman killings going on across the country. We've got a very special guest in the studio in the person of Kemia Amadou Haruna, who is a program manager of a specific project talking about citizens' security. And she'll be helping us. She's coming from West Partners West Africa to look at this issue of community policing, how successful it could be. Good morning. Nice to have you join us.
Good morning.
Yeah. Looking at community policing, we remember in July 5th, 2017, we had a acting president then, Yemi Oshibanjo, saying that there was going to be a new policy as regards community policing. And it's been said that to attain United Nations one policeman to 100 citizens, Nigeria needed as much as 1.8 million policemen. Looking at those statistics and these current challenges we're facing, especially, for example, what happened in Benue State, what should be the best way forward?
Good morning again.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you for having me. Since the launch of that program, we've really not defined what exactly it is that we want to define as community policing in terms of how the rollout is going to be. I think last week also the APC came out with what they feel was the need for
the chief dualism.
Yes, the state
Yeah,
policing. That they're thinking about having state policing, but then also there's a federal component of handling certain crimes that they feel is that. But the issue of state policing goes beyond just formal security sectors, because right now you also have what we call non-state security actors who are actually in communities, whether it be vigilante groups or hybrid securities that are located in different parts of the country. So these are the people that you probably would have to be focused on and see how to embed them within the community policing framework, because as it is, we don't have that number. You just read out the figure that the UN is looking at. We don't have that number of personnel to be able to crisscross the country as it is. So this people who are embedded within the community is how do we organize them properly and then harness some of the good of the work that they're doing and see how to properly package the community policing that we're talking about.
I'm going to ask two questions in one. First of all, we have so many security outfits, so many security bodies. You have the DSS, you have the MUPO, you have the police, you have the soldiers, community policing, vigilante groups and all that. Now, when these people are on ground, are their rules actually well defined so that this one will know where to stop and that one will pick up and all that one? And then secondly, when you look at community policing and the vigilante groups, is that going to strip the vigilantes of some of their roles, or how are you going to divide that, or actually also define that?
Your first question completely is that we have various agents, security agencies, as at the last count, if I'm also to add the law enforcement agency, I think there are going up about 17, of them. The issue is about coordination and synergy, and that lies basically with the Office of the National Security Advisor as to how, if there's an issue of threat, who are the first responders. Clearly, we do know that the Constitution provides for just one Nigerian police force. There shall be one Nigerian police force. And so, statutorily, that is, the person that is responsible and saddled with internal security as it is. But what we're having now is that the threats are becoming too wide and too, if you may say, a little bit overstretching for the police. So you have other agencies that are coming in to
and
also.
They're all effective?
Well, effectiveness
Some
and efficiency is something else to discuss. If it was, we probably would not have the non-state actors such as the vigilante groups coming up. As such, I think the issue of defining the roles and responsibilities of each agency, it's been stated in their different acts. However, implementation of those roles and who comes first, who comes second is another discussion entirely as to who is handling who, and that really is at the discretion of the commander-in-chief as to how he wishes to go by. Coming to your second question is that what we're trying to do, tomorrow we do have a program on the role of non-state security actors in community policing and election security, is that we're trying to really understand, what is the role of these actors in terms of community policing. So there's a roundtable discussion, and Treasures is having different speakers, and the security agencies as well, to see how to properly, redefine the roles of these actors so that we're not having the same issue of coordination, lack of coordination and efficiency in terms of if these actors will be embedded within this structure, then there's need to understand what is it that they're going to be doing within the community, and then there are no clash as to responsibilities, at any point in time.
What's with the word actor? On a lighter note, it just sounds like some Bollywood, Nollywood movie.
Yes.
Can't another word be replaced with that? Something that serious?
We say security actors, so people that have
they act a lot.
they act a lot, more or less, in the business of the work. That's just a concept on its own.
Okay, but Camille, let's look at you made issues about this non-state actors, there, right? We remember what happened to the Peace Corps of Nigeria. With that kind of issue, what's the conviction that we're likely to see something unified in order for the main essence, which is providing security for those in community levels, can be achieved? If you look at the stance of the Nigerian police in that particular episode, are you convinced these non-state actors are likely to get a chance to contribute?
So first, let me clarify something. When we say non-state actors, non-state actors are people who are belligerents, if you call them. Then there's non-state security actors. That's the component in which the Peace Corps falls in. When we talk about community, we understand that a lot of the issues that are coming up, even to the federal or state level, happen at that grassroots.
Right.
So having a structure that is a replication of the formal security actors would not really work. Because what you need is a community-based policing, to be able to approach. So the Peace Corps, we did a research, I think sometime last year, on non-state security providers in Nigeria. The Peace Corps is quite spread, across the Nigeria. Federation, yes. And likewise the Vigilante group, which covers even to the 774 local government areas, we don't want the replication of what we're having, but that the dangers of having that same structure is that we're not going to have efficiency as to what we really want to get out of it. As for the clash with the police, is something that is where when this bill came up, we were putting in our own memoranda to say, is there a way to better structure these people? There are so many non-state security actors. Can we have a codified, unified legislation that talks about bringing all of these people into one group, as opposed to having different groups spring up? The president might sign that bill. If he signs it, then we will be dealing with another issue of clash of power.
Okay, good.
Completely, So it's all part of tomorrow's activity to see how to better harness and coordinate these actors properly, to get what we really want.
You just said something very salient, clash of power, and of course it's going to take place tomorrow, but just going ahead, can you just give us some insight into what you're expecting? How is it going to, be divulged? How are they going to be sensitizing? Maybe probably some people had more power, and because they're not going to be unified, probably some people have to step down. How are you going to sensitize them or walk them gradually into that process?
Well, clash of powers is even with the sister agencies, we still have frictions here and there. So, police has birthed a lot of people. He has birthed NSCDC, has birthed road safety, and so on and so forth. So, again, having these groups coming out is like you're relinquishing some of your your powers. But however, we must understand that there's need to strengthen the law enforcement agency. That's the police itself. When we strengthen them, in terms of also recruitment as to the people that we bring, expanding the organization, equipping them, I think they're able to perform the work that they're going to do. So for me, it's just the fact that when this comes up, we as civil society have a lot of work to do in terms of sensitization and telling the non-state security actors that you're not here to replace the police, but you're here to work in synergy, because we're all fighting towards achieving one goal, which is the peace and security of Nigeria.
All right. We know that there are 2 or 3 main factors that made the Nigerian police not very effective. One of them is the corruption within them, the poor, attitude of the police officers. What will be put just to ensure that these new groups or non-state actors do not somewhere along the line follow the same direction? They also know the issue of equipment and all that. What's the guarantee that this new groups coming up, when it's unified, they're going to get all they deserve in order to do better than the Nigerian police?
I think last year again we're at another public hearing on still, the Committee on Security was just trying to talk about funding for the security agencies. And then part of the things that we object is that you're creating more groups where we're talking about there's not sufficient funding for the ones that are already existing. How then do we move forward, from here? So it's still now going to be what you call fight for the little resources in ensuring that I'm doing what I'm doing, the other one is doing what is doing. So what we would like to see is a system of accountability, accounting for what you have been given in a transparent way. And to curb corruption is that you ensure that the line of financing, is clearly stated from onward. And also, when you talk about equipment, I'm not thinking that they will start giving them guns, for instance, but that you would just need things that would be able to aid you, such as intelligence gathering through tools. You don't, for now, don't need any sophisticated equipment. So the basic things such as touchlights, witness protection facilities, and all that, and then communication gadgets, will be much more, very much important in their own work.
All right.
Let me ask 2 questions in one again. When you look at the aspect of digitalization, just talked of corruption. It's so strange when probably exposes or forums or programs are going to be held, and so much money is expended when it comes to taking care of the police people, their families, salaries, pensions, and all that. There's so much problem. That is a big shame. So now, when it comes to corruption, when money passes hands easily, that is when corruption is at its fore. But then, if digitalization is encouraged, it's more paper trails, from one system to the other system and all that, there's more transparency, because it's more paper trails than cash being passed. Is that being encouraged in the system?
I think it's a gradual thing. We are now doing zero budgeting, and we're doing the treasury single account, which is all forms of ways of ensuring that we don't have multiplicity in terms of cash flows and all of that. To a great extent, depending on who you're talking to, that has caught a lot of hand to hand transaction. However, you still have issues of men that are on the streets. These are things that are not digitalized. If I need to pass somewhere, Nigerians on their own also aid corruption, in the sense that because you want something done fast, or because you need to move to somewhere, you buy your way out. You don't want waste of time, in all of this. But what last week I was at workshop, on humanitarian crisis, and part of the suggestion that was given is that, can we now begin to wear body cameras, those that are on the streets, advocating for that. That way, you could be able to see certain things that are happening on ground, monitoring from where you are. That's part of digitalization, and then see how to come.
I'm sure they won't be able to grab you first, take black nail polish and paint it up or something.
These are some of things even with the name tags, at least. Now Nigerians are very conscious, so somebody can be with a pen and is recording what is happening. Can
live
be,
streaming.
Live streaming. Yes. So all of these things are cutting. It's a long shot. I was told that is a large budget that might not even be accommodated in the next one. But I think taking it bit by bit, in terms of infusing technology in security, will go a long way in averting the level of corruption.
Okay, and when you look at this community policing, do you really think it's going to be that effective?
We need to have a bottom-up approach in terms of security.
So
a lot of
the community itself has to be involved.
The community has to be involved, and then there has to be trust, for the community to the security agencies, to say that confidence also is another thing, that if I report something, as an intelligence, that somebody will pick it up and act on it, and that it will not be traced back to me. So oftentimes people report and it's not being acted upon, and then you become a victim of being a good citizen. So there has to be public confidence and trust on the part of security agencies, even with the community organizations that are being the non-state security actors that are coming up. They're up because the community trusts them to protect them, and that's it.
All right, we're in 2018, and it means pre-election year. Looking at all the crises going on in different parts of the country, how imperative is this that community policing should kickstart as soon as possible, looking at the elections coming, and what roles is Partners West Africa going to be playing just to push the advocacy?
Elections has already started, we're in January, but the campaigns, subtle campaigns are going on and all of that. On the part of INEC, they have this interagency committee on elections and security, as a body of security agencies with INEC to plan as to how they wish to go forward in the election. So it's for that body, I'm hoping, has already begun strategizing, looking at the threats, possible areas of threats, how to mitigate them, and what to do. As for citizens also, is that there's need to ensure that you have your PVC, that's the voter's card, so ensuring that there's a lot of sensitization even on the part of INEC in making sure that this is available, and then we go out to vote. Not the one of when somebody wins somewhere, the time we say that is now the conclusion of the general feel of the people. For us as an organization, we're women-led and women-driven organization. So what we would like to see is that more women come out to contest positions, and that it goes beyond the election, but that we're seeing entrenchment and having some percentage of women in various offices. That way, I think we'll be equally represented.
Just to ask here, we know that internal democracy has always been a big problem of Nigerian political parties, and the violent nature of the electoral process, primaries and all that. That's why women seem not to always have that opportunity to come out. What are the likely steps to be taken just to ensure that less violence is going to encourage women? Then, in terms of money, purchase of forms also on the high side, making it not so easy for the women folks. What steps could be taken to ease these hurdles for the women?
I think internal democracy is very key, and women are very powerful also. If we look at the last elections, it was determined by largely women, so we are a force to reckon with. As such, if a seat is not going to be created for you, you create one. You use your power of voice to create one, and that's the first way to go about it. If we're going to wait that it would be created, it wouldn't, and it's not about takeover, it's just about working also with men that are feminist inclined to talk about the issues. I'm sure every politician has a daughter or a wife or a sister, so you can relate with some of the issues, and you'd like to see your daughter be the Theresa May of Nigeria tomorrow, so these are some of the issues that we need to begin to appeal to the conscience of the men as civil societies, to continue to advocate and see how laws can be changed, and adaptive to the realities of today, as well as also for women to I think we have a lot of women that are politically conscious, and those that are even around, will be able to do some work with less of their number, but they can do greater good as to opening more doors for those that want to come into politics.
Okay. You've got some questions?
Because
I have two questions. Let's just stick into community policing. You're from Taraba State, right?
Yes.
With the killings in Taraba State, can you give us a true picture of what really is going on in Taraba? What's the true picture of what's happening in Taraba State?
Taraba has been one state that has unfortunately, I think since the return of democracy, has struggled to I'm trying to use the right words.
Okay.
Has struggled to really find itself politically aligned.
Okay.
As such, you have a number of high rate of unemployed youths.
But why is that? Not to cut you short, but why are they struggling? They've had governments
constantly, but we've not been able to have the right leadership that would drive the potentials of that country, of that state particularly, as to how to harness her greatness in terms of tourism, in terms of agriculture, in terms of technology, and all of that. Unfortunately, we have a mixed community of both Christian and Muslims. We have Fulanis that are from, Taraba and all of that, and we've not been able to understand the greatness of our diversity. As such, we continue to thrive on
communal clashes.
On communal clashes, on generational things that I think we should have moved away from, completely. So it's with the anti-grazing law also, there's going to be more issues, so there's need for a lot of sensitization, for the youth, for the traditional institutions, for the religious groups, for political holders, because we have to take into cognizant the different diversity of people. Somebody has had his way of life, and suddenly you're cutting it short.
Sure.
That is an attack on somebody. So appealing to the conscience and understanding that this is not to harm you, but to see how we can avert more issues, more clashes, will help a lot. We also have the issues of the Tiva and Jukun crisis, that has to do with land encroachment. So a lot of intervention by the state governors at the neighboring states, would avert some of.
Would community policing come into place? Would it help the situation we have in Taraba?
It will. The last fight from my community, Kashimbila, which happens to be where the dam is located, is also the issue that you had where boys had to be raised to defend their community. So I think community policing will do a lot of work in that. But it's not just community policing, but a lot of dialogue, talking, and understanding each other. Nigerians are, we're brothers when we leave the shores of this country. We don't ask if you are from which state. The first thing I ask you, oh, you're Nigerian, and then we talk. But once we're home, we're tearing ourselves apart. So a lot of dialogue, mediation, would reduce some of these issues that we're having, and less cost on deployment of security agencies for things that, we could talk over.
With the incessant killings and violence and clashes and all that, we talk about dialogue, but then probably there are certain groups of people that want to insist and stand their ground until they draw their last blood, that this is supposed to be for me and no one else to share. How do you go from there?
There's mediation.
Even the mediators can be corrupt, because that is what's happening in Benue State now. You talked about the rulers, the traditional rulers.
Yes, but when you're a mediator, you necessarily don't have to come from that place, So you're completely somebody that has no, and that's why when you're choosing a mediator, you have to understand who you're picking as a mediator. Somebody who has a listening ear, has the charm, to be able to get people's attention, So, who's not biased completely, like you said. It's to have that person that is completely oblivion of the situation, but you're also a good listener. At the end of it, you're in the middle, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. So until we have those crop of people, then we'll continue to have these issues that we're having, because also a traditional ruler has to understand that we are not a porous society. You're not just having just one set of people dominating a state. Lagos, for instance, has gone beyond whether you're from Lagos State. I'm from Taraba. If I was born and bred in Lagos, I would have opportunities of that. So when people are provided with their basic needs, I think they forget where they're from, but that we're all looking at what is it that we can benefit from that state. So having good mediators is important, and then where that fails, negotiations.
Where should these mediators come from? Should some of them come from one part of the society or the other? Because naturally there could be bias if one comes from this part of the society and wants to probably be a middle person. So where should
you can come from, I can be a mediator from Taraba State and be mediating somewhere in Oyo State.
No, okay, for instance, Taraba right now.
Yes. Taraba could have, we have international organizations, could be mediators, because there's a good example of people that are completely, out of the scene and all of that. Number of good CSOs also could be mediators, depending on which side.
Bodies or individuals.
Yeah, bodies or individuals could be mediators. Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap up, your primary assignment as a program manager is citizen security. Can you tell us some of the highlights that you've noticed that actually could help in citizens security? Some tidbits you think people should arm themselves with, and societies should practice in order to ensure we've got this communal security?
I think participation is very key in terms of citizens' engagement.
In anything anything happening in society.
Yes, in anything happening in society, you understand that for somebody to come into your community, you must have understood that there's a new neighbor entering, and then you're watching the lifestyle and all of these things, it helps in being conscious of your environment, part of it also is the fact that if you can afford the technologies of CCTV, monitoring your environment is important. Then, most important, know your divisional police office. Most of us don't even know where the divisions are located until when something happens. You must have a number of somebody to be able to call. To say this is what I'm noticing, and this is it. Lastly, also is that we need to be conscious, of your movement, of wherever you're going to. You're not just driving and looking forward. That's why you have the side different. I think about 3 mirrors looking at that. If you are driving at night, you pick a light and see that there's somebody has been trailing you or whatever it is, you divert. So as people, we need to be more conscious of our environment and avoid places that are too dark, that that anything could happen if you're caught up there.
All right, I decided to save this question for last because you made mention of women, the women power, and the need for them to get into politics and the right places. If we look at the comments of the First Lady going forward, does she strike you like someone that, if supported, could actually cause some upset in the political space?
She's a Nigerian and she's entitled to her opinions, and so. But I wouldn't. Which of the comments now?
From the other room to the hyenas and jackals taking over the kingdom, to this recent one about which she retweeted about incompetent people being given a chance to govern us, and looking at those 3 different statements she made, which seem at variance with her husband, does that give any sense of belief that if she stood out for an elections, goes to the polls, she might get the support of other women in Nigeria?
Well, it's no doubt, definitely. Anybody would, even if I come out, I would probably get support of 1 or 2 people, So.
Are we convinced we're not going to do what Sarah suffered when she had just 1 vote?
I think women have gone beyond that and would be doing ourselves, a lot of harm. If we do that, and that's why I said there's need for consciousness, and also even the Ministry of Women Affairs has to learn to negotiate their places in different places. So it goes just beyond election of calling women to gather and support, but that what is the need for us, if you want our support. She definitely, if she comes out, there's no saying that she's not going to have support or whatever it is. As for the comment of the other room, I think that should be her husband or so, but she's a Nigerian and also is entitled to her views or things that she feels are not aligning properly, and maybe advise as to which way to go about it. So she would get definitely a lot of support.
Then finally, on the community policing we were talking about, what roles can women or should women be playing in order to really help that advocacy go through?
We have under citizen security program,
right.
We have a project that we're running promoting informed dialogue on security, and part of that discussion is looking at prioritizing the voices of women on security. Oftentimes when we have stakeholders are being called, women are not part of the majority of the stakeholders. So can you just have stakeholders of only women to discuss how the issue of security is impacting on them? They see things, they hear things. They're in the market, they're in shops, they're in their houses, they're seeing the child of this person moving and all of that. But when it comes to the stakeholders, they're greatly being ignored, So for us is to have, you have to have, the dialogue has to extend to them, because at the end of it, they're the victims of these issues, and sometimes also the perpetrators of the conflict. So that forum of women has to be created, and they need to be heard, and probably their solutions might differ completely from their male counterparts, or even the traditional women. And having a committee of 10 men and just one woman and say women are represented, I don't think that's a good way to go.
Some.
I'm good.
All right. Okay, I want to say a big thank you to Valka, Mia, Ahmed, Haruna, for doing us justice this morning, taking us through community policing from the female angle, and also she is a program manager for citizen security and also the rule of law and empowerment initiative, also known as Partners West Africa, joining us on Africa's Finest Breakfast Show this morning. And she's told us a lot of what can be done and the importance of community policing, and also elections, looking at the fact that 2018 is the election year, and the deep roles women should be playing in order to help us achieve community policing and security for everyone. I want to say thank you very much for joining us, and say well done for the work you're doing already.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be going for a quick break. When we come back, Newday will definitely continue, as we have other things just for your delight.